Jonathan Palmer. But first, it's Murray Walker over here.
And the Canadian crowd here at Montreal is fired up like it has not been since 1978, when its then favourite son, Gilles Villeneuve, won his first Grand Prix, and he won it appropriately here at the Ile Notre Dame at Montreal. And they're fired up because his son, Jacques Villeneuve, is making his Canadian Formula One debut here today, from second on the grid to Damon Hill, where the time difference between them yesterday was a minuscule 2/100ths of a second. And I'm delighted to tell you that it is a glorious day here at Montreal. Clear blue skies, just some few clouds up there. The temperature is about 20 degrees, 31% humidity. Track conditions are absolutely ideal. And in the warm-up this morning, the two Williams cars of Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve were again the fastest, as they were for the grid. It's a revised track here. Last year we had a ridiculous chicane out of the East Hairpin, which has now been renamed. That chicane has been removed. We now have a long 180-mile-an-hour straight, and that is extremely good news for all of us and for the drivers, because that is the classic formula for a good Grand Prix. There's a long approach to a slow right-hander from 180 miles an hour down to about 55 miles an hour. And that means that overtaking is possible, as it is at several other places around the track. It's the halfway point of the World Championship, and this is indeed a crucial, Johnny Herbert, up to his tricks as usual. This is a crucial race, especially for Damon Hill. 17 points ahead in the championship, yes, but I have a suspicion that he's going to need that cushion, because Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari is getting better and better. Not Schumacher, the car. And he has been testing the new high nose for the Ferrari over the last 2 days. He says it doesn't make all that much time difference over a lap, only about 1/10 of a second according to him, but it does enable the car to be more stable, and that is extremely important. Now this is a race over 69 laps, and that is a race distance of just under 190 miles. And as ever, strategy is going to be vitally important. Last year most of the drivers just stopped once. This year we have a suspicion that there are going to be 2 stops for some of the drivers, maybe the majority having one. We'll be hearing more about that later on. But Damon Hill was absolutely superb in qualifying yesterday. With only 2 minutes to go, he was 4th on the grid, and it looked as though he wasn't going to be on the front row of the grid for the first time this year. And he really reached deep down to pull out a magical lap, just that 2/100ths of a second faster than his teammate Jacques Villeneuve, and that could make all the difference. It's a short run into a left-hand bend and then a long sweeping right-hander afterwards. And as ever, if the pole position man can get into that first, he's got a clear track ahead of him and a psychological and a practical advantage.
This Grand Prix looks like it's going to give us the closest, the best race we've had so far this year. And the reason for that is that the margin between the 3 front runners, and by that of course we mean Villeneuve, Hill and Schumacher, is absolutely tiny. There is just 1/10 of a second covering those first 3. And from the way qualifying went, we saw Damon Hill being slow to get right on the front running pace. It was Jacques Villeneuve that set the early form, and then Hill, as he does so often, gradually chipped away at those tenths until he finally took pole by that scant 2/100ths of a second. But for Michael Schumacher, it was a difficult time. He started in qualifying with the T car, with his race car. He had problems with that, and then he had to change to the T car. And that, I think, means that most here think there would have been a pretty good chance of Schumacher actually getting on pole had he got it all right in his race car, not had traffic, etc. It was a difficult time in qualifying for the Benetton team. Jean Alesi had a brake failure, as we subsequently found out, when he rather extraordinarily left the track. He spun going into turn 3, having quite a dramatic looking incident when he hit the tyre wall, but a left front brake pipe failure was the cause of that. Gerhard Berger spun as well, and Rubens Barrichello, looking at him now, he had a bit of a disappointing qualifying session, as did that man David Coulthard in the McLaren. Reliability has seemed to escape McLaren, certainly in the level they've had it before, and Coulthard had a hydraulic problem on Friday. He had an engine blow up spectacularly this morning, and problems too in qualifying yesterday with spins.
Well, very quickly, let me eat a slice of humble pie. I accused Jean Lacey of making a severe error yesterday in going off. It wasn't his mistake at all. It was, as you've just heard from Jonathan, a broken brake pipe. So my apologies to Jean. Now, what's happening down in the pit lane? Tony Jardine is there.
Well, the first thing is that one of the Ferrari mechanics has just gone running past me with a spare helmet for Eddie Irvine, so I'm off the grid at the moment. But while talking about Ferrari, they're the only team that I've seen. They've actually been refueling on the grid. Whether that suggests one stop or not, I don't know. Jonathan will be able to tell us. Had a quick word with Adrian Newey from the Williams team. He's concerned about brakes and the high RPM that the engines are going to have to go through here at this track. Damon looked in good shape. He was shaking hands and thumbs up with all his crews. Salo has changed to the T car, the Tyrrell T car, because of a water leak in his race car.
Well, there is the mysterious Eddie Irvine helmet change. It's not hard on tyres, this circuit. The technicians say that there will be one tyre change for tyre wear reasons. They could, of course, make them last the whole race if they wanted to, but the best performance characteristic means that they will have one stop. It's hard on brakes, very hard indeed on brakes, and that will affect the strategy that the teams adopt. It's also hard on transmissions. The race will last, I think, about an hour and 45 minutes, and there you see the magnificent Montreal skyline in the background across the mighty St. Lawrence River. Minutes to go to round 8 of the 1996 Formula One World Championship, the halfway point here at Montreal, Canada. What is going to happen? Well, your guess is as good as mine. The Williams are certainly looking strong. Front row of the grid, only 2/100ths of a second separating Hill and Villeneuve. Schumacher certainly looking good in the Ferrari, and their main competitor Jean Lacey, well, 3/10ths of a second off. The Benettons have yet to do well in winning terms this year. I've got a feeling that this may not be the time when they do so, but we'll soon see. And Eddie Irvine in that second Ferrari in 5th position. So the Ferraris and the Williams are the obvious front runners. The McLarens of Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard, despite the fact that Hakkinen is in 6th position on the grid, are not yet off on the pace. Hakkinen was about 8/10ths of a second off Damon Hill's time in qualifying. And the Jordans have done very well in qualifying this morning, because Rubens Barrichello and Martin Brundle were 3rd and 4th fastest, and Barrichello is starting 8th on the grid and Martin Brundle 9th, and it really does look as though now, with his new engineer Andy Tilley, Martin Brundle has overcome the problem that he's been having with the Jordan Peugeot all year, that of getting the car to suit his style and to adjust his style to suit the car. So we could see the Jordans very well up this race.
Yes, indeed, it would be good to see Martin Brundle break this run of bad luck that he's had. He's been struggling this year, but having found this quite significantly different way of setting up his car, he has indeed performed better. In qualifying, he was 9th, which is his best position apart from one this year. Although Rubens Barrichello, he hasn't done so well. He's just in 8th. He's normally around about 6th. But this morning's practice, in fact, was not a qualifying session. It was a warm-up session. It does not count to anything, but the Jordans were indeed third or fourth. But from qualifying, the pecking order that we saw was pretty much as per normal. Eddie Irvine did a bit better. He normally tends to qualify in 7th. He moved up to 5th for this particular race. Hakkinen lifted his average too. His average is 8 and he was 6, so that was better for him. David Coulthard, he didn't have a good time, largely due to unreliability in 10th. But otherwise, much as we've come to expect. But let's have a flashback to last year's Grand Prix here. A Grand Prix that saw Michael Schumacher on pole. Michael Schumacher stream away and lead, with then being followed by Damon Hill, David Coulthard. The conditions were damp to start with. Coulthard spun off on the very early stages. Damon Hill went on to have a hydraulic problem about 2/3 of the way through the race, and that put him out, leaving Michael Schumacher with an apparently unassailable lead until Schumacher had that gearbox problem. He came back into the pits, came back and clawed up to 5th, but by which time Jean Alesi had taken his first Grand Prix victory on his birthday last year. And in 2nd place and 3rd place, we had the 2 Jordans, Barrichello and Irvine, at that year, with reliability being a very much an important factor. And it will be here too. Whilst this circuit is very hard on brakes, the reason that is because we have long straights, followed by, you can see it just there, that's the fastest part of the circuit, 190 miles an hour under that yellow and orange bridge. Hard down then on the brakes, down to 2nd gear. And in fact, the drivers can brake later to get up the pit lane there than they can to get around the corner. So hard on brakes, then hard on engines and transmissions, pumping your way out of those very slow corners. But actually, it's not particularly hard on drivers, because it's the faster corners that really push the drivers hard. And of those, there are very, very few.
22 cars on the grid for the Canadian Grand Prix. Both the 40 cars have qualified, and they were not both on the back row of the grid. They are genuinely making some progress, slow, but they are progressing. Luca Badoer is starting from 20th position on the grid of 22. Ricardo Rosset, the Brazilian driver in the TWR Arrows Heart, is 21st, and Andrea Montermini, the Italian in the second 40, is starting last. So that's good news for them. Terribly disheartening if you come out all this distance, take part in the qualifying and all the preliminary sessions, and don't get within that 107% of pole time cut-off point. So, as ever, it's going to be the run to the first corner that is going to be absolutely critical. Will Damon Hill get there? Villeneuve is an excellent starter.
And Michael Schumacher's got a problem with his Ferrari, so Schumacher's destined to start this race from the back of the field. That's not going to start. What a massive blow there for Michael Schumacher. The technician is still working on that car, and that leaves Damon Hill. There's Schumacher there. He's going to have to follow now the whole field, if indeed they can get the car started. A lot of consternation there.
It's obvious. I can see the Magneti Marelli technician working on the car. And this is, well, I hesitate to use the word disaster, but it is terrible for Michael Schumacher. It's great news for Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve, of course, because it means that Schumacher's got to claw his way all through the field. He's getting away now.
So Schumacher's going to be starting the race from very last on the grid, and this should at least enable us to see some fantastic driving. Let's look at the circuit as we go around now into the first corner. We're likely to see some kind of minor incident there. That normally happens here. It's a very short run down to that first corner. Is it 2nd gear, 3rd gear, 4th gear, up to 150 miles an hour into turn 3. This is where Alesi and Berger lost control. About 70 miles an hour through that. Now we cut to the point 2/3 of the way round the circuit. This is corner 10. This is the hairpin where Mika Hakkinen attacked Johnny Herbert last year. The Benetton and Jean Alesi there weaving to get the all-important tyre temperature up. Damon Hill out in front. This is going to be a big, big relief to Hill and Villeneuve, although having said that, Schumacher has started so poorly this year so far that they probably didn't think there was a great chance of him coming by, but of course you can never discount it. Now, in terms of people to look for on the start, Jean Alesi will be having a really good look to see if he can get by Villeneuve or Hill. They both start very well. On the league table of making up places, David Coulthard is still out in front with some 2 to 3 places each start he makes, whilst Mika Hakkinen actually is at the bottom of the league table. He tends to lose a couple of places. So Hakkinen's in 6th. So let's watch the start, watch for a good one from Alesi, good one potentially from Berger as well. But all important thing is keeping it clean into that first corner run, because now it looks very much like it's the fight between the 2 Williams cars.
But I predict that we are going to see some quite incredible driving from the fired-up Michael Schumacher, because 2 years ago, Schumacher started the Belgian Grand Prix from 16th on the grid and he won the race. He's starting from 22nd on the grid today. Eddie Irvine on the right now. On the right is Damon Hill. Behind him, with a clear track in front of him as he sits in the Scarlet Ferrari, is Eddie Irvine. Schumacher, who's coming into position last on the grid, had an electronic problem yesterday. Second on the left, second on the grid is Jacques Villeneuve, and behind Villeneuve is Jean Alesi, another Demon starter. He's got a situation now which will help him. Watch for the lights going out. And Damon Hill slots in front of Jacques Villeneuve, who tries to go round the outside. Is he on the inside of the corner? And there's been a change, I do believe. No, it's still Damon Hill leading, and Jacques Villeneuve, who tried to slot inside. Alesi is third, fourth is Eddie Irvine. So it's Williams, Benetton, Ferrari, then tucked up behind the Ferrari of Eddie Irvine is the red and white McLaren, and that's Mika Hakkinen. Then it's Gerhard Berger. One of the Jordans is well up, so that'll be Rubens Barrichello ahead of his teammate, or is it Martin Brundle? No, it's Martin Brundle who's gone ahead of his teammate, Rubens Barrichello. Terrific start, and Schumacher is fairly scything his way through the field already. Look at him on the left as they come down to the hairpin. But Hill has got a substantial lead on lap one. Hill, Villeneuve, Alesi, Irvine, Hakkinen, Berger, Gerhard Berger, and look for the Ferrari of, well, you just saw a flash of Michael Schumacher, but this is giving Damon Hill a wonderful chance because he's got a clear track in front of him. Jacques Villeneuve has got Alesi in his wheel tracks, but Damon Hill is building up the gap. Irvine is still in fourth position. And look down the grid, look for Schumacher as Hill goes through. There is Coulthard, there is Verstappen, behind Verstappen is Johnny Herbert, and there, behind one of the Minardis, is Michael Schumacher, and it's Fisichella that he's got in front of him. So Schumacher is 17th, he started 22nd. He's gone past 21, 20, 19, 18. Ahead of him is Fisichella, and wham, we're straight past the Minardi with Michael Schumacher. Now, Hill's first lap time was 1 minute 29.49, and Michael Schumacher, obviously much longer. He's in amongst the traffic, 1 minute 40, and there. Now, here we are. Look for Schumacher. And who is that pulling it in the shadows? It's Irvine. It's Eddie Irvine. Eddie Irvine, it's an engine problem. I'm smoke coming from the back of the Ferrari. And that is Eddie. Well, a dreadful race already for Ferrari. Michael Schumacher starts from the back. Eddie Irvine stops, gets it going again. Some kind of electrical problem, perhaps. But at the end of the first lap, Damon Hill led Jacques Villeneuve by over 2 seconds. There's Villeneuve second, Alesi third, Hakkinen fourth, Berger fifth. Then Brundle, Martin Brundle. Down to the left-hander, turn one. Keep swinging right, turn two. And Michael Schumacher has gained another 2 places. He's 12.6 seconds behind Damon Hill. Fastest on the track is Hill, 1 minute 24.69. There is no point in making comparisons with last year's lap times or race times because of the difference of the circuit. And that is Mika Hakkinen, and now here is Eddie Irvine coming into the pits and effectively finishing his race. He's last now, having stopped already, and this is going to be the first retirement of the Canadian Grand Prix. Indeed, I do believe he was just driving into the garage. He's gone straight into the garage. Hill leads, looking for 10 more World Championship points, and he said this morning after the warm-up, the car is absolutely superb. It's been better this morning than it was yesterday, better than it was on Friday. I feel very happy about the setup. And it's Jacques Villeneuve's first Grand Prix race here at Montreal. So Hakkinen, Berger.
Well, clearly a dreadful start for Ferrari there, with Schumacher having his engine problem and Irvine a problem, presumably with the engine that's putting him out. Maybe they were related. We'll perhaps hear some more news from Tony Jardine, but this is just the kind of start that Damon Hill really wanted to have. He's got away cleanly. He's pulling away, more to the point, from Jacques Villeneuve. Let's have a look there. We're looking at a replay of coming down into turn 10 and a lot of getting right on the outside on the dirt. And let's see who that is. It's a Jordan. It does indeed.
So I think that was Rubens Barrichello, because it was Rubens Barrichello, because there is Martin Brundle, and Martin Brundle in 6th position is right up behind Gerhard Berger. And if Martin Brundle can close up on and get by the Benetton, he will A, be doing extremely well, and B, doing himself a lot of good psychologically. Martin needs a good race, and it could well be here in Canada that he gets it. We're on lap 4 out of 69, and Damon Hill going faster and faster, lap by lap. He's just gone round in 1 minute 24.2. He's now 3.3 seconds ahead of Villeneuve. There is Hakkinen, Berger, Brundle, and they are in 4th, 5th, 6th places. And you can see how close the performance of most of the cars here is at Montreal. Lacey on the right, Villeneuve on the left, in respectively the Benetton Renault and the Williams Renault. Identical engines. The Renault people have entirely separate mechanics and development people to look after the respective teams, to make sure that there is no interchange of information between the Williams and Benetton teams. And now Michael Schumacher is up to 14th place, but even further behind race leader Damon Hill, because of the traffic that he's having to carve through. He's 16 seconds behind Damon Hill as you watch the battle between Jacques Villeneuve in 2nd position, Jean Alesi in 3rd place. Canadian versus Frenchman, Williams versus Benetton. Englishman Damon Hill in the Williams Renault is way out in front now, coming up to 3.5 seconds ahead, because his last lap was quicker. And Villeneuve, who says that driving a Formula One car here is very different to the Formula Atlantic car that he won in Canada with in 1993. The car is wider, of course the performance is much, much greater.
Now, one of the things that we have to wonder, looking at the lead that Hill has got over Villeneuve, is are they on the same fuel stop strategy? Because it could well be that Hill has a lighter car than that of Villeneuve. That could explain why Hill is gradually able to ease out. And we saw from that graphic there, 4.0 compared to the 3.9 in brackets means that the gap between Hill and Villeneuve was 3.9. It's now 4.0 seconds. But looking at the lap times that these cars are doing, it's my guess that probably that Damon Hill is actually... And then we just heard, in fact, that we got Tony Jardine with Eddie Irvine. Let's find out what happened.
Eddie, a dreadful start for you and for Ferrari. What happened?
I don't know what happened, Michael, but at the start, we have the clutch problem back again, and I made an okay start, but I was able to hold position, which was good. And then I was running behind Alesi quite comfortably, and just going down the straight on the 2nd lap, the front right-hand push rod snapped. And there's no curbs here, you know, to do any damage to them, so it's a bit of a freak. I think 2 freak things in one day, you know, with Michael not starting at the start. It's just not a great day, but Michael's still out there, so you never know.
Thanks for talking to us, Eddie.
Well, front push rod braking is very bad news because the whole suspension collapses. But now Rubens Barrichello has closed up on Martin Brundle, who dives out. And Martin Brundle goes past Mika Hakkinen and moves up into 5th place. The Jordans are flying. Brundle ahead of Hakkinen and Rubens Barrichello right behind the red and white McLaren. And the race order on lap 7 as you watch Brundle, Hakkinen and Barrichello is Damon Hill leading by 4.3 seconds, Villeneuve 2nd just ahead of Alesi, Berger is 4th, Brundle has just gone up to 5th, you can see Hakkinen there 6th, and Barrichello is 7th ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
This really is a fantastic race on Martin Brundle. He's pulled up from his 9th place grid position. He got the jump on teammate Rubens Barrichello at the start. He does make very good starts, and it could well be that this will be absolutely instrumental in his result here today. And then getting by Hakkinen, I suspect, in fact, that what we're seeing here is Mika Hakkinen driving with a heavier car than that of the Jordans. The Jordans are making progress very quickly, and it's my guess that they're going to be on a 2-stop strategy and that Hakkinen is going to be on a 1-stop strategy. Now, we've got a 69-lap race, and that means that the stop, if they're going to make 1 stop, will come between about lap 32 and lap 40. If they're going to make 2 stops, and let's watch for Barrichello having a go at Hakkinen, that's going to be the next thing coming up there. On the long drag now, this is the straight that takes you all the way back up towards the pits, and it was here that Brundle got by Hakkinen on the last lap. So this presents Rubens Barrichello with his best opportunity of getting right in the toe of that McLaren. They're doing 190 miles an hour now. Out he comes on the brakes, but he did not do what Martin Brundle did, so not so good there. And one of the criticisms that has been levelled at Rubens Barrichello is his lack of top-line ability to overtake. He's known to be very fast, he's known to be a gifted driver, but into the ability to actually break that 1/10 of a second later, to get the margin, to get the overlap, that's what you really need to do to race, and that's what Brundle's done. Look how far ahead, and that's Katayama having hit the wall. It is Tyrrell. Katayama, well, we've seen that, of course, many times. There's the wheel rolling to a stop. Good thing that hasn't got anywhere that is more dangerous. Now, that's certainly going to have the yellow flags out, but it looks like that car is right in the middle of the road.
Well, let us hope that it doesn't bring the safety car out to close up all the competitors. Damon Hill has built up a lead of nearly 5 seconds, and it looks inevitable to me, because you see that's one of the arrows on the right there. That I think there must have been a collision between Ukyo Katayama and that arrow's car, and I would suspect it's Rosset. It is Ricardo Rosset's car. Well, that's a very quick bit of work with the crane. Congratulations to the Canadian marshals as Katayama runs away. That is a superb bit of recovery work, because hopefully it's left the track clear and they won't have to bring the safety car out. And Rubens Barrichello is now right under the rear wing of Mika Hakkinen's McLaren, having another look. Race order, lap 9. Hill leads, Villeneuve second, Alesi third, Berger fourth, Brundle a magnificent fifth. Hakkinen is in 6th position. 7th is Barrichello, 8th is Frentzen. And here we see the replay. There goes Katayama up the inside. Katayama actually loses the back end of his Tyrrell under braking. Rosset has allowed him room to come through, but then Katayama, having lost control, drifts his car into the side of Rosset. So that was Katayama's fault, I'm afraid, on that one. He just underestimated how fast he was going. He didn't maintain the stability of the Tyrrell as he came into that corner. But we've got the Jordan cars clearly flying with a lighter fuel load. The question is, what are the Williams cars doing? That's what we need to look at. Looking at the lap times they're running, and that's a 1 minute 23.9 for Hill the last lap, but his best lap so far is about a 1:23.2. It's probable, I think, that Damon Hill is going to stop just once. Now, originally, I wondered if perhaps Hill was going to stop twice and maybe Villeneuve once, and that was why Villeneuve was falling behind. And Villeneuve continues to gently. He's on a 5-second deficit. There it is. He's 5 seconds behind Hill now. So one of the things that we want to bear in mind is it could be, and that's Rosset walking his way back in, it could be that Villeneuve will stop once and that Hill will have to stop twice. We'll watch those lap times carefully. I can tell you that the Williams team were agonising right up to the last moment almost about whether to stop once or twice. It is a very close run thing. If you get it absolutely right on a 2-stop strategy, it could save about 5 seconds, but if there's any delay at all, it could mean that you would lose that amount. And there's always a problem, of course, that if you get your pit strategy wrong, the driver who's just refueled his car and put new wheels and tyres on will emerge in the traffic, and all the hard work will be for naught. But meantime, Damon Hill is stretching out his lead all the time now. It's nearly 5 seconds on lap 10, which is 1/7 distance. And Villeneuve, by the same token, is easing away from Alesi. It's 1.8 seconds now between the Williams coming into the Casino hairpin there and Jean Alesi in the Benetton. In 4th position, it's still Gerhard Berger, so it's Williams, Benetton, then the Jordan of Brundle, the McLaren of Hakkinen, the Jordan of Barrichello.
Now there's the Jordan of Barrichello just leaving the hairpin, chasing Mika Hakkinen's McLaren. This again is where Barrichello needs to be right up behind that McLaren to have a chance of getting by, because Brundle has now pulled out 2 seconds. In fact, 3 seconds there ahead of Mika Hakkinen, and I'm sure the Jordan team, look how close Brundle is in fact to Berger, and the Jordan team I'm sure are looking on with this point about Barrichello's overtaking ability really hitting them there at the moment. There's David Coulthard, he's following Heinz-Harald Frentzen back there, whilst Michael Schumacher really is not making a huge amount of progress. He's still down in 14th place, he's lapping some 2.5 seconds a lap slower than Damon Hill right out in front, and that just shows you that even when you are arguably the best driver in Formula One in a Ferrari that might have been on pole position, once you get bogged down with the traffic, you can't just scythe your way by that easily, because to get the overlap safely, even when there's a fair amount of performance difference between these cars to overtake, is actually pretty difficult, and that's what Schumacher's finding, I'm sure.
Yes, I say this with respect, but Michael Schumacher is making a gigantic meal out of getting through the traffic, and he is famous, like the late, great Ayrton Senna, for being able to carve through the traffic very well indeed. He's been behind Mika Salo's Tyrrell Yamaha for lap after lap, and Schumacher, who started 22nd, very quickly got up to 15th, then to 14th. And some of that, of course, was as a result of people dropping out of the race. He's firmly stuck behind Mika Salo, lapping to within 1/10 of a second at the same time, obviously. And Barrichello now does get past the McLaren of Mika Hakkinen, so both the Jordans are in the top 6. Martin Brundle is 5th, Mika Hakkinen is down to 7th, Barrichello is up to 6th, and all the hard work that Peugeot have done on that V10, that Gary Anderson and his men have done on the car, designing it and building it at the factory just opposite the gates of Silverstone, is coming home. Coming home very successfully indeed. There's still a long way to go, and there's going to be more attrition in this race, because the Montreal circuit is famous for stopping cars often towards the end of the race. Damon Hill, lap 12, his lead 5.2 seconds. And also about 5 seconds is the lead of Martin Brundle over Rubens Barrichello, a game which just shows you how important it is to be able to overtake cleanly. And Brundle, of course, did that with Hakkinen a few laps ago, and that's time which is going to be very, very difficult to make up. Now, what Barrichello has got in front of him now is a clear track, so we can see what kind of lap times he can do in comparison with those ahead of him. But this really is a brilliant performance. Now here we are, here's Barrichello going by Hakkinen. 190 miles an hour, hard on the brakes, slowing in just about 2 seconds down to the 50 miles an hour that you need to turn into that corner, that second gear, 60 miles an hour, and then punch their way out. But Damon Hill has now stabilized pretty much. He's doing a 1 minute 23.2, 1 minute 22.3. That looks to be a fast lap time if he's running a one-stop routine. It looks to be a bit of a slower lap time if he's running 2 stops. Now, if they are going to stop twice, the first stops are going to be coming round about lap 22, lap 23. We're lap 12 at the moment, and therefore the second stop, if they're going to stop twice, will be around about lap 46. If they're going to stop once, it's going to be round about lap 35, give or take 3 or 4 laps. And there is Michael Schumacher, 13th place, and as you can see, it's the blue and white Tyrrell of Mika Salo in front of him, and in front of Mika Salo is the Sauber of Johnny Herbert. So you're looking at the battle for 11th, 12th and 13th, and you certainly don't expect to see Michael Schumacher fighting down there, and nor does he. I said earlier on that when he started the Belgian Grand Prix from 16th place the year before last, he made no bones at all about slicing his way through the traffic. That, of course, was in the Benetton. Here he is in the Ferrari. But I suspect he's got some sort of a car problem. With the greatest of respect to the people in front of him, Schumacher in a really fit Ferrari would be on his way well and truly by now, and higher up than the 13th place that he's in. But it certainly makes a great sight. There's the high-nose Ferrari, Johnny Herbert in the yellow-nose Sauber, Mika Salo, who had problem after problem in the practice and qualifying with the gearbox of the Tyrrell Yamaha. It wasn't, as is so very often the case, an electrical problem, it was a mechanical problem, but the result was the same. It meant that Salo got hardly any laps at all on the track, and he's doing extremely well to keep ahead of Schumacher and behind Johnny Herbert who is actually pulling away a bit. We're on lap 14, and it's a 69-lap race, and the three that you're looking at are going into turn 4 now. They're coming up to look for the very tight, almost hairpin turn 7, where they come down to third gear. That's it, 55 miles an hour. Now they sweep right, and they've got the St. Lawrence Seaway on their left. They're coming down to the Concord Bridge. That's it over them now. Sweep right again. They're building up to 170 miles an hour as they come down to the hairpin, which they will be doing in just a few seconds' time. They're at it now.
Damon Hill setting the new fastest lap of a 1 minute 22.9 on that last lap. Now what's happening there, he's going faster as he's doing more laps, and the reason for that is not that he's getting used to the circuit more, it's because he's using up fuel, and as he uses up fuel, the car gets lighter, and as it gets lighter, he can go faster. Now that should happen everywhere, but what happens on most circuits, in fact, is that as the cars do more laps, the tyres get more stick, they get worn more, and you tend to lose more on lap time from tyres wearing out than you gain from the cars getting lighter as the fuel gets burnt. That is not the situation here. This circuit is very easy on tyres, and therefore there's very limited amount of tyre degradation as they go around, so the influence of the fuel burning off tends to be the dominant one, and that's good for us because it means that we're going to see the drivers keep attacking the whole way. They don't need to preserve the tyres here on this circuit, certainly not excessively so, and we can see them attacking, racing, fighting all the way from start to finish of this race.
3 drivers out, Riccardo Rossi, Ukyo Katayama, who collided, and of course Eddie Irvine with that broken front pushrod problem in the Ferrari. There are 18 still on the same lap, and that is lap 15 out of 69. Jos Verstappen, the Dutch driver in the Arrow's heart, is 3 laps behind. I must honestly tell you, I don't know what the problem is. I haven't seen him on the track. He's not in the pit lane, but now you can see ahead of you, or you did see ahead of you, the McLaren. This is the battle for 8th position. It's Frentzen who is in 8th position, Coulthard who is 9th, and behind him Olivier Panis in the Ligier, 10th.
And Coulthard would have been definitely lining up there to try and find a way past the Sauber there of Frentzen. One wonders whether or not that Sauber is on just a one-stop routine here. Does it have half a tank? Is Coulthard's car lighter? I suspect not, because I think really Coulthard in the McLaren should be faster than Frentzen in the Sauber. Ford have done a lot of work on the engine. They've been revving it to 16,500 in qualifying now, and although they've gone back to their normal 16,200 rev limit, still astronomical numbers, but of course they're chasing with this new engine. But Coulthard is being held up by Frentzen, of that I'm sure. But another worry must be down in that Ferrari pit, because apart from Schumacher still languishing back in 13th place, if that has been the case and Eddie Irvine's had that broken pushrod, and incidentally the pushrod is that angled bit running from the front wheels up to the top of the bodywork. If you look at Damon Hill's car, one each side angling up in an inverse V, the actual suspension loads are fed through those diagonal push rods up to the springs that are actually on top of the driver's feet. So if one of those breaks, the car falls to the ground, and there must be a worry about Schumacher's car too, because as Eddie Irvine said, he didn't go over a curb, and that's the normal reason why a driver might be able to influence that, but it looks like it's just a failure of some sort with that Ferrari. No doubt we shall hear more, particularly after the race.
Now you're looking at Gerhard Berger, who's in 4th position. He's only a couple of seconds behind his teammate Jean Alesi, who is 3rd. But at the present moment, neither of the Ferraris, with Eddie Irvine out and Michael Schumacher down in 13th place, are in the World Championship points. And both the Benettons are very much so in 3rd and 4th places. So if the things stay the way they are now, if Schumacher fails to progress to the 6th position, and there's not the slightest sign of him doing it, there's not the slightest sign of him advancing to 12th position past Salo at the present moment, it would dramatically close the gap between Ferrari in 2nd position in the Constructors' Championship and Benetton, who are currently 11 points behind them. Into the pits comes Andrea Montermini in the newly liveried 40. He started last. He had a pretty grisly practice with all sorts of problems for the car. There are the 2 Benettons, and as in the Williams team, there are no team orders. The 2 Williams lead, the 2 Benettons, and there they are. Alesi ahead of Berger, are 3rd and 4th, ahead of Martin Brundle by about 4 seconds.
This is not a difficult circuit, relatively, necessary for drivers to do, and that is why I think we're seeing the cars in much more of a 2x2 formation here than we had done at other races. Berger is having his best race of the season, certainly with regard to his closeness to Jean Alesi, and those two Benetton drivers, that's Alesi in third, Berger in fourth, must be hoping, they must be hopefully thinking from their point of view that they're on a one-stop routine and have got or started with half a tank of fuel. They must also be hoping that those two Williams cars ahead of them are intending to stop twice, because if they do, if that is the situation, that would explain, rather than being pure performance, why the Williams duo of Hill and Villeneuve are out in front. We'll know the answer in about another 7 laps as and when anyone comes in for that first stop, if it's going to be the first of 2.
Look at Herbert, Salo and Schumacher. They are 11th, 12th and 13th. This is an altogether new Formula One experience for Michael Schumacher in his incredible career, and this is his 77th Grand Prix. He's been on the podium 40 times. Over 50% of his finishes have been in the first 3. To be down at 13th and as far down for as long as he's been is, as I say, a completely new experience for him. He's fighting hard, but so are the people in front of him, and so are Alesi and Berger, and the Benettons have been going much better here in Montreal with their revised rear suspension. They've replaced the 1996 original specification of torsion bar springing at the rear with the normal coil springs that they've used in the past, mainly for reliability reasons after Alesi had his break when he was doing well in the Spanish Grand Prix, and away they go. So it's the two Williams, and they are now 7 seconds ahead of the Benettons that you're looking at. When I say they, I mean Villeneuve and Hill, and between the two of them there is 6 seconds. So Damon Hill is very much commanding this race, having already won in Australia and Brazil, Argentina and San Marino. Now, Gerhard Berger needs points. Alesi has done better than he has this season.
Now this is a low downforce circuit. Look at the rear wings on those Benetton cars and see how shallow, how thin they are when you look head on just like that. There's very little vertical perspective to those wings. Now Benetton are running the cars in a very low downforce configuration, and that means that they're faster down the straights, they have a little bit less grip on the corners. But when we have so many straights, that's generally the trend that everybody's gone here. But there are differences. We'll see if we look at the Williams cars, and the pictures will surely come to them soon, that they too have a very shallow angle on the wing, and it's the shallowness of the angle that makes them look thin. But then if you look at the McLaren, if you look at the Ferrari particularly, you'll see a much deeper wing on the car, and that means those cars have more downforce, or they are running more downforce. They're going to be going a little bit slower in a straight line, and maybe look, there's the Williams. See how shallow the wing is on that. And what we really want to do is look at a Ferrari next, and you'll see that it's much deeper, and that means that the Ferrari is a bit slower in a straight line, and it could be that that's actually hindering Schumacher now, because you need the straight line speed to be able to overtake with, and that he hasn't got, although it should help him around the corners.
Villeneuve coming up behind. The 40. I was about to say it's all over the road, because you could see it yawing as he went into the corner, and it's Montermini, Andrea Montermini, that you saw in trouble earlier on, who goes off into the gravel trap but manages to keep going through it and rejoin the track. And we're now lap 20, coming up towards 1/3 distance in the Canadian Grand Prix, and at the present moment Canada's thousands who want to see Jacques Villeneuve win more than anything else are not looking likely to see their wish achieved, because Damon Hill is pulling away from Villeneuve at the Canadians' first drive in a Formula One race here. The Benettons are going well, but Martin Brundle is definitely now starting to catch the two Benettons. He's in 5th position. He's gaining on both of them. He's 3.5 seconds behind at the moment. We'll watch it very carefully. Rubens Barrichello is doing the same thing. He's about 3.5 seconds behind Brundle, but both the Jordan Peugeots are currently going better than both the Benetton Renaults of Alesi, who is 3rd, and Berger there, who is 4th. That's Villeneuve 2nd.
Well, they are on the track now, but it's still my suspicion that the reason that they look as if they're going better than the Benettons is because the Benettons are intending to stop just once in this race. They will have to go through for another 15 laps or so before they come in for their pit stop. And there comes Fisichella coming in. for maybe the first of his stops. So let's see if this is a refueling stop. Yes, it is indeed. Now we're lap 20. Now the significant thing, and also now we've seen this better performance from the Jordan team, and it would be suggestive that if they're going to be on a two-stop strategy, that those Jordan cars will be due in shortly. But I don't think either of the two Williamses will, or the two Benetton cars. They, I think, are running, and Berger's having a real look at Jean Alesi there. But in my view, expect to see the Williams and the Benettons stay out for another 15 laps, but the Jordan's coming in soon.
And look at Martin Brundle. Look how close he is now to the two Benettons in front of him. On the previous lap, it was over 3 seconds. It was 3.5 seconds. Now it is 2.3 seconds. In the Jordan Peugeot, Martin Brundle, there he is in the white helmet, is reeling in the two Benettons at about 1.5 seconds a lap. Rubens Barrichello has come into the pits. There he is. Now, lap 22. This is indicative of a two-stop strategy, at least. That's not a bad stop. 11 seconds. Now, knock 3 seconds off that. Bring it down to 8 seconds. Multiply by 12. He's put in about 95 litres of fuel into the Jordan. And now you see third, fourth, fifth under the Concorde Bridge. Sweep right. Now left, they're doing about 80 miles an hour here. Accelerate up to 170 as they come down to the hairpin. That's Villeneuve in second position. And the gap, as you see, between Alesi and Berger is certainly less than 0.6 seconds now. And Martin Brundle is going to be right with the Benetton Renaults in the next couple of laps, maybe even less. Alesi, Berger, Brundle, Martin having by far his best Grand Prix of 1996. And this is his 150th Grand Prix. Martin, who has driven for so many teams, for Tyrrell, for Zaxby, for Williams, for Brabham, for Benetton, for Ligier, for McLaren, and for Jordan this year, is on a roll at the present moment, and it is a richly deserved one. The man from Kings Lynn has got the bit between his teeth, and he's going for it. And he's not only going for it, he's succeeding. Lap 23, Hill leads Villeneuve by just under 10 seconds. You see the battle for third, fourth, fifth, Alesi, Berger, Brundle. Hakkinen is sixth, his teammate Coulthard is seventh, Parnis is eighth, Herbert is ninth, Salo is 10th, Schumacher up to 11th, and into the pits comes the Jordan of Barrichello.
Well, that must be a problem, because of course he's been in once. This is his second stop, and therefore there's a problem with that car. We can just about see it from our commentary box, and indeed there's some chat going on the radio. This does not look well. Now we're looking at it, and maybe they're blowing some debris out of the back of that. That's an airline, I think, that they're putting at the back of that car. Maybe it's been overheating. That could be one reason why they're trying to get rid of some debris from the back of the car, but either way, that looks suspiciously, to me, like it's going to be the effective end of Barrichello's charge here. But for Brundle, yes, he is charging. But again, I think that it's pretty clear he's going to be coming in the next lap or two for his first of his two stops. If he stays out for another 10 laps, I shall be mighty impressed. And that means that his closeness to those Benetton cars was somewhat artificial, presuming that Benetton do stay out for another 10 laps. But on the other hand, there may well yet to be a lot to be gained from that, because it really has inspired Martin. And even though he will know the situation, it will get the fight, get the hunger back into him. And the psychology of driving hard is all important. The last half a second is down to confidence, being buoyed up on top of the whole job. Hill's got it out there now. He's really very much in a rhythm. He's 9 seconds ahead of Jacques Villeneuve now. Villeneuve, and that's more Termini again out in the 40. Well, he's had a grim time. He had a grim time yesterday when, in fact, what we thought was an engine problem turned out to be a gearbox problem. And in that circumstance, if anybody was watching yesterday, perhaps he didn't need to stop the car. And Jordan, we understand, are getting ready. So expect to see Martin Brundle coming in next for his stop. Now, that stop at Barrichello's was not actually good. For a two-stop strategy, 11 seconds was a bit long. It really should have been more like 8 or 9, I believe. And I think we're going to be wanting to be seeing that from the Jordan team on this one.
Damon Hill is commanding this race, but I hate to remind you of the fact that he also commanded Monaco until his engine let go, and he lost an absolutely certain 10 points. So nothing is finished in Formula One until the winner has seen the checkered flag. Meantime, Martin Brundle, lighter fuel load or no, is right up with the Benettons, and that is Rubens Barrichello back in the fray.
And just looking at the cars we're looking at now, the Benetton and the Jordan, if we get a head-on shot, you can see how much wing the Jordan is running. It really is running a great deal of wing, and in a quest to get more downforce. The Peugeot engine is very powerful, and the power of that engine, look at it now, you can see the greater depth of that wing on the Jordan car, the power of the engine in as Panis comes in for the first of his stops. Now, again, we're thinking it really should be around about 8 or 9 seconds for a good stop if it's the first of 2. Let's have a look here. Tyres done, watch the fuel pipe coming off. It is, well, it's 10. That's now Brundle there. Was that Brundle coming into the pits for his stop? No, it's Barrichello coming in, and surely into retirement for Barrichello.
Well, I do feel so sorry for poor Rubens Barrichello. He's already retired 4 times this year. The advent of Martin Brundle to the Jordan team had done him a power of good because he couldn't get on with Eddie Irvine last year. And Martin Brundle has helped the young Brazilian no end, but now he is certainly helping himself. And with Barrichello out of the race, it means that Hakkinen is in 6th place, Coulthard is in 7th. Well, that is Rubens Barrichello's Jordan being removed from the race, and again it looks as though Jordan have not. Where is Martin Brundle? Where is Martin Brundle? There he is, coming into the pits. Yep, absolutely right, Jonathan. Martin Brundle comes in on lap 26, and the speed of the Jordan Peugeot and Martin Brundle was to some extent illusory on account of the fact that the car was running lighter.
And that was a great stop from the Jordan team there. Absolute precision, that really was good. Now the next thing is, are we going to see the Williams car stay right out for another 8 laps? That's how long, or they could probably come in the next 5 laps. If they do, it'll probably be the first of 2 stops. This is the point where lap 25, I would say lap 30 is the cut-off point. Now, if any of these cars that come in are going to have to do another, or if they're going to get to the end of the race on 1 stop, then they're going to have to, at the moment, put about 12 seconds worth of fuel in the cars. That'll mean a 13-second fuel stop. So anybody that comes in the next 3 or 4 laps and has an 8, 9, 10-second stop will have to make another one.
Good news for Woking. Both the Williams are in the top 6, both the Benettons are in the top 6, but the good news for Woking is that both the McLarens are now in the top 6 places. We're not used to saying that this year, because although this year's car is better than last year's car, it's not as good as the top opposition. But despite that, Mika Hakkinen is now in 5th position, albeit 37 seconds behind Damon Hill. But Coulthard is in 6th place, just 1.5 seconds behind his teammate, and Damon Hill has again gone fastest, 1 minute 22.396, which is some 0.6 of a second faster than his teammate Jacques Villeneuve that you're looking at. Villeneuve is now nearly 11 seconds behind Damon Hill.
And the question is that because he's just not driving quite as quickly as Hill, or is it because he's had a heavier fuel load? If it is the latter, we'll expect to see Damon Hill come into the pits before Jacques Villeneuve. That could be an explanation.
Any moment now, in fact, because we have seen the inboard being held out to Damon Hill, so we can expect him on this lap to peel off when he gets to turn 11. Well, you don't peel off, actually, you just go straight into the pit lane at enormous velocity. This is the shortest pit lane in Formula One because the pit lane length is such that you go straight off the track into it and straight onto the track when you come out of it. There are no runs in and runs out, and that of course will have affected the strategy of the teams. It's one of the factors that they feed into their computers, and you're watching Damon Hill now with that 11-second lead. He will not be able to come in, change tyres and refuel before Villeneuve goes through, so we can expect there are the Williams team all ready to receive Damon Hill, and Villeneuve, I'm sure, is going to go through into the lead.
This is certainly interesting tactics from the Williams team. We are beyond third distance. That was 4 laps ago. We're not as far as half distance. That's another 7 laps to go. Now, we saw at Imola, Williams were becoming more creative, less predictable with their strategy. Are they doing the same thing here? It looks like it. So, when Hill comes in, we need to look carefully at the length of the stop, and particularly the length that fuel pipe is on. If he's going to make this his only stop, this is going to need about 12, 13 seconds worth of fuel. If it's going to be the first of 2 stops, he's going to be stationary for about 8 or 9 seconds.
Well, that is Damon Hill. Rolls up to a standstill. The 2 Jacks, front and rear, go under and lift the car. That is the fuel hose, which Robbie Tyres is holding. Off it comes. 9.4 seconds for Damon Hill. Now, does this mean that he can get through and out of the pit lane? He has rejoined in 2nd place, and you're looking at the new race leader, Jacques Villeneuve from Canada, in the 2nd Williams Renault, and Damon Hill is about 5 seconds at the present moment. It may change on the next lap because things are always a bit fluid when they come in and then leave the pits. But at the present moment, it's Villeneuve leading Hill. The positions have changed, but of course Damon has had his stop and Villeneuve has not. Lacey is 13 seconds behind Villeneuve. Lacey in 3rd position, just ahead of his teammate. Mika Hakkinen is 5th, 15 seconds behind Gerhard Berger, and 1 second ahead of David Coulthard. Those are the top 6, and that is the leader.
Excellent pit work there from the Williams crew, and we had the evidence. 9 seconds, that was the first of 2 stops for Damon Hill. So this man, Jacques Villeneuve, looks to be running to me a 1-stop routine. That means he's got another 5, 6, 7 laps to go on this tank of fuel before he will come in for what I'd imagine will be about an 11 or 12 second stop, unless he comes in the next few laps, and I just don't believe he's going to do it. So I think the pattern we've got now has really added some interest, because the Benetton twins are still running around tied together virtually. Lacey 3rd, Berger 4th. No sign of any activity, I can tell you, from the Benetton pit. Therefore, we have every reason to think they are going to make this just a 1-stop race. So when they come out after their pit stop in another 7 or 8 laps, the crucial thing will be for Hill to be far enough ahead so that he can make his 2nd pit stop, which will be round about lap, well, probably lap 45, lap 50, something like that, and be ahead when he does it. That's a long way ahead, but the key thing is we've got a difference in strategy between Hill and Villeneuve. 1 stop for Villeneuve, 2 stops for Hill, and Benetton with just 1 stop for the 2 Benetton cars. Jordan, we know, have gone for 2. Brundle's pit stop was beautifully slick. Barrichello's out of the race now. Hakkinen is going for 1 stop. We thought that was why he was holding up the Jordans, and indeed that looks to be the case. A lot to play for here yet.
Absolutely fascinating. Meantime, where is Michael Schumacher? Well, he's up to 9th position at the moment, having started 22nd. Has he passed Mika Salo? Yes, he has, and he's passed Olivier Panis, but the reason he's passed them is that they have both stopped and he has not. And Schumacher is now 54 seconds behind Villeneuve, the race leader. He's a long way off from being in the points, because the time gap between Coulthard, who is 6th, the last man in the points, and Schumacher, who is 9th, is 21 seconds. And Coulthard is lapping in about 1 minute 23.5, and Schumacher is lapping 2 seconds slower. So, at the present moment, unless there are a lot more retirements, it's going to be no points for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, as it has already been no points for Eddie Irvine.
So we've got Williams 1st and 2nd, Villeneuve then Hill. We've got Benetton 3rd and 4th, Lacey Berger. We've got McLaren 5th and 6th, with Hakkinen and Coulthard just 1.8 seconds behind. Now, in the cases of Benetton and McLaren, this leaves an opportunity for pit stop work, be it slick or otherwise, to actually influence these positions. With Berger just being a second or so behind Lacey, if Lacey's stop is a bit slow or Berger's is particularly fast, that could put Berger ahead of Lacey. And being that just the 1 stop, that could then pretty much determine the result of the race between those 2, as it could for the McLaren duo. If Coulthard gets into the pits, gets out of the pits faster than Hakkinen, if his actual stop is as quick or a little faster, that again could put Coulthard ahead.
And Villeneuve, who you are looking at now, is forcing the pace. Now, with Damon Hill having been in and having made a good stop, 9.4 seconds. Villeneuve knows that he must keep going as quickly as he possibly can, just in case anything goes wrong when he does come in. But he's got a commanding lead at the present moment. It's 7.3 seconds, although Damon Hill has now pulled the bung out well and truly. He's gone faster again. 1 minute 22.26, marginally faster than Villeneuve. But remember that now that he's got those new tyres on, he will be able to keep up that speed a bit longer. The new tyres don't make all that much difference for all that long, so we can expect Hill to make another few laps quicker than Villeneuve and to close the gap. But when Villeneuve comes in, his stop is going to be absolutely crucial, and you're looking at the unique sight now of Michael Schumacher being pursued by a very determined Pedro Diniz in the Ligier Mugen. Diniz, the Brazilian who drove for the 40 team last year, and they are lapping in virtually exactly the same time, and Schumacher is not pulling away from him. He's got some sort of a problem. Jonathan, can you hypothesize about what you think it might be?
Well, it certainly looks that way, and I don't think it's got anything to do with the suspension problem of Irvine. I think we can dismiss that. Either a push rod breaks or it doesn't, and I'm sure that Schumacher's suspension is fine. One has to say it's most likely to be a consequence of some kind of electronics glitch that afflicted the car at the first place, the engine not running as well as it should do. We're trying to have a look at the straight line speeds of the cars. That could give us an indication, and certainly Schumacher's straight line speed around the circuit is significantly lower than one might have expected, so I put it down to an engine problem.
And I'm quite sure that Schumacher will be very phlegmatic and cheerful about his problem, as he always is after a race where he's had some. Not that he's had many in his career. He's a very realistic chap. He said all along that he expected the Ferraris to be competitive, truly competitive here in Canada. Well, he's been proved sadly wrong thus far. Eddie Irvine going out. Admittedly, a breakage is not something that you would normally expect, and if the push rod had held up, Eddie Irvine would undoubtedly have gone well. But Schumacher is in some sort of trouble now, and I think there is some news from Tony Jardine in the pits.
Yes, indeed, that Williams pit stop, which I witnessed at first hand, was extremely well executed, and the Williams mechanics were very pleased, because the first thing they asked when they came back into the garage was, how long did that take? And via BBC, we were able to tell them that it was 9 seconds. They were chuffed with that. I've just been down to the Jordan garage and found out that Barrichello's problem was clutch, and we saw them keep sending him out, but the third time he came back in, they had to push him out of the way very quickly because they were expecting Martin Brundle for his 11-second pit stop. And incidentally, that was the last set of fresh tyres for Damon Hill. The rest, the other sets are all used.
15 of the 22 starters are still running. The retirements, in the order of the retirements, are Eddie Irvine out with that broken push rod, Katayama out, his collision with Rossett, Verstappen has disappeared, as has Heinz Harald Frentzen. Montermini went out in the pits in the 40, and Barrichello sadly went out in the Jordan, and Luca Badoer is running last, having already been lapped.
They're on lap 34. It's a 69-lap race. We are pretty much at half distance. So expect to see the other teams, the ones that have not stopped yet, getting ready for their solitary stop. That means the Williams team for Jacques Villeneuve. It means Benetton, and there they are, the Williams team, ready for Jacques Villeneuve. It means the Benetton team for Lacey, for Berger, the McLaren team for Hakkinen and Coulthard. All that is going to happen, I think, in the next 4 or 5 laps.
And Damon Hill is continuing to force the pace, endeavouring to close the gap between himself and Jacques Villeneuve in the hope and the expectation of taking the lead when Villeneuve there comes in for his stop. This is lap 35. Hill has got the gap down to under 7 seconds now, progressively, from 7.2 seconds to 7.1 to 7, and now to 6.9 seconds. So it's going to be a very, very close run thing. Looking back at Canada's own, Jacques Villeneuve leading the Canadian Grand Prix, and it is the Canadian's 8th Grand Prix only in his Formula One career, after dazzling the Indy world in America by winning the Indy 500 and the championship last year. he did in reverse what Nigel Mansell did. Mansell went from Formula One to Indy racing, won the championship in his first year. Villeneuve has gone from Indy racing to Formula One, won a race in his first year, and he says he sees no reason why he can't win the championship. Well, at the present moment, he's 17 points behind Damon Hill, but things can change very quickly indeed in Formula One. 10 points for a win, 6 points for second place. Villeneuve goes through again for another lap. So his one stop is absolutely on target. Most of the people stopped on lap 33 last year, except, and the previous year, Michael Schumacher stayed out when he won for Benetton significantly until lap 37.
So in there comes Gerhard Berger, the first of the Benetton stops, and remember that a good stop from Berger could get him ahead of Jean Alesi. 9 seconds will be a good stop. We're past it. Well, of course, this is going to be, I beg your pardon, this is the first of 2 stops. So, yes, 11, 12 seconds. That was a good stop for a one-stop routine here. That will have been putting in 110 litres of fuel. But I've been having a good look also. Let's see where Berger comes out. And that is one of the salvers that he's coming out of in front of. And he's ahead of Brundle now.
But he's behind Coulthard and Hakkinen. Alesi is still third. You're watching the race leader. Hakkinen has moved up to 4th as a result of Berger's pit stop. Coulthard has moved up to 5th as a result of Berger's pit stop, and Martin Brundle is now right behind the Benetton. Berger in 6th place, Martin Brundle in 7th place. Now, of the leaders, those who have not stopped now into the pits comes the man I was just going to mention as not having stopped. It's Jacques Villeneuve. Now, his pit stop time is going to be longer than that of Damon Hill, of course, which was 9.4 seconds, because just a single stop, he's got to have enough fuel to take him for the rest of the race, and Villeneuve stops in 11.5 seconds.
Absolutely perfect work, not just from the Williams team, but with the way that Villeneuve had that car moving without an excess of revs, without any histrionics. He came out straight away, absolutely no problem at all, really got that crisply. Into 3rd place there, behind Hill, Alesi, Villeneuve now.
Yes, the gauntlet has been thrown down, and Damon Hill has gone faster again, under 1 minute 22, 1 minute 21.9. He leads Alesi, who has yet to stop, by 13 seconds, and Villeneuve is in 3rd position, and he's about 17 seconds ahead of Hakkinen at 4th. Coulthard is 5th. Berger is down to 6th position, just ahead of Martin Brundle. Herbert is 8th. Schumacher is 9th. Parnis is 10th. Sarlo is 11th. Diniz is in 12th place, and that is Johnny Herbert coming in from 8th position in the Sauber, and he will lose his position. In fact, he's already lost it because Olivier Parnis has gone through.
You can see there that it's the length of time to refuel that really determines the length of the pit stop when they go for more than or fewer than two pit stops. So, what's also interesting is that we have, as part of our data, the time it takes from the time that a car comes into, and that's one of the Minardi's, as well as the McLaren there. Now, is it Coulthard or is it Hakkinen?
It's Hakkinen. I'm a bit hesitant, but we'll soon see. It was Mika Hakkinen, and again the mobile chicane situation of the Minardis, who've got far less horsepower, has caused somebody's downfall. Mika Hakkinen right up with his teammate David Coulthard. They were 4th and 5th. Now, what we didn't see was whether Hakkinen stalled the engine or whether he's going to be able to recover. If he does, well, that was Hakkinen coming through, and he's into the pit lane. So Mika Hakkinen is coming in now. Is this for a routine stop, or is it for him to check the car? Well, he's been in. That's it. In goes the fuel hose. And meantime, Jacques Villeneuve has moved up to 2nd position ahead of Jean Alesi, who has been in for his stop. So all the top 3 have now stopped. Damon Hill has stopped, and he's leading Villeneuve by 20 seconds. Villeneuve has stopped. He is 14 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. Coulthard is up into 4th place after that. Here's a replay. Now, there's the Minardi. Now, you see, there's Hakkinen. He just loses it. He loses it because probably he looked in his mirrors and saw David Coulthard trying to go through. but I was, in my mind, accusing the Minardi of being in the way. I don't think that was the problem. I think Mika just lost the rear. The McLaren is very light at the back.
No, absolutely. That was Hakkinen making the mistake on his own, as did Katayama, in fact, early on. These low downforce configurations that we have here, these shallow wing angles, mean that the cars are very fast in a straight line, but they're very light on their toes under braking. It's very easy, particularly with the gear shifts going down, to lock the back end up and having the back coming round. And having, I think what would have happened there was that Hakkinen would have known that Coulthard would be looking at the presence of lapping a Minardi as an opportunity for him to try and get by Hakkinen, and therefore Hakkinen maybe have braked a little bit too late. That's certainly what happened. The back of the car came round. I don't think they even touched, in fact, but Hakkinen did the right thing coming into the pits. He may well have been able of intending to do that anyway, but nevertheless, a little bit of a mistake there from Mika Hakkinen,
who is under enormous pressure from his new teammate David Coulthard. We regard Mika Hakkinen, and rightly so, as being blindingly fast, but in actual fact David Coulthard is ahead of him in the championship by 2 places and 2 points, and he has consistently gone quicker than Hakkinen in qualifying and in the race, of course, and Mika is finding it very hard indeed, I think, particularly after the awful crash that he had at Adelaide at the end of last year. That is Villeneuve. He is second, 20 seconds behind Damon Hill, and lapping marginally slower than his teammate.
Now, what's interesting is that that pit stop of Mika Hakkinen's was in fact the fastest we've seen so far for a one-stop routine. He was stationary for just 10.5 seconds. His pit lane time was 29.17 seconds. That includes his time stationary. But in fact, we should, although the McLaren team are without doubt absolute experts at slick pit work, what we should also appreciate is that as the laps go by, they're going to need to put less fuel in these cars. The cars are using about 3 litres of fuel a lap. It takes the fuel rate, the fuel flow rate is 12 litres per second. Therefore, for every lap the cars do, the pit stop should take a quarter of a second less. So we've now got David Coulthard, who's yet to come in. He's up in 3rd place at the moment. So in theory, his stop should be faster than that still. And for every lap it goes by, another quarter of a second faster. So let's see if they can get that pit stop down to the low 10s for Coulthard.
Well, for your information, Lacey will take that 3rd place from Coulthard when he comes in. He's only about 3 seconds behind the McLaren as you watch Olivier Panis, Michael Schumacher, who are in 7th and 8th places, and a battle as they turn into turn 11. Olivier Panis on the inside, but Schumacher's got the inside line here, and he hits the bollards. So has he damaged his front wing? That's a replay.
Well, I don't think so, but the really significant thing there is what on earth is Olivier Panis doing overtaking Michael Schumacher in a Ferrari? And the answer is in the straight line speeds of the cars. I've been looking at them, and the Ferrari is definitely down on power. In fact, the straight line speeds of the Ferrari as it's running in this race are on par with the 40s. He's got that little power. So clearly an engine problem for Schumacher, not a problem that's stopping him running, but that's why the Ligier was able to go by. It's simply going in, it's in a much better trim. The engine's working properly, whereas Hakkinen's is not. Whereas Schumacher's is not. And that's Salo with an engine problem. Talking about engine problems, another engine problem for Yamaha. I'm afraid we've seen it so often this year, and a lot of frustration in the Tyrrell team with that situation, I can assure you.
Riding with Mika Hakkinen, chasing Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, and actually closing up on it as they go down the 180-mile-an-hour straight line, the chicane, down to 55 miles an hour. Mika Hakkinen has made his stop. Indeed, David Coulthard is the only one of the top 6 who has not stopped. Michael Schumacher, who is 7th, ahead of Mika Hakkinen, who has stopped, has not, if you follow me. I mean, Schumacher has not stopped, and Mika Hakkinen has. Race order, lap 42. Damon Hill leads Villeneuve by 21 seconds and is lapping faster, but has made one stop and will be coming in again, whereas Villeneuve will not. Coulthard is in 3rd position, 3 seconds ahead of Alesi, but it's going to come in.
Now let's just look at the comparison of straight line speed between Hakkinen with his Mercedes engine McLaren and then Schumacher with that Ferrari V10. They're coming down into turn 8, turn 9. They'll be pushing out of here into the hairpin. This was where we saw Hakkinen spin before, and this is where the straight line speed builds up to about 180 miles an hour into the hairpin, hard on the brakes, right down and accelerating out of this. But it must be time for the and there is Coulthard stopped. Coulthard is, yes, so it's only Schumacher to go now. Schumacher must be due to come in any minute.
And Martin Brundle is up into 5th position. David Coulthard's stop has dropped in places. The race order now on lap 42 is Hill, Villeneuve, Alesi, Berger. So Alesi moves up into 3rd place ahead of Coulthard, and Schumacher comes into the pits. We're riding with the Ferrari now. Lap 42, he certainly left it late for his single stop. Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. We haven't got a time split running. Yes, we have. Now, because he's taking on less fuel, it should be a quicker stop. Not a particularly fast one. 12.4 seconds, and he has lost places. Johnny Herbert has moved ahead of the Ferrari as Schumacher rejoins the track. And what was that I saw bouncing off the tarmac? I can't tell you, but we'll wait and see whether it was anything that's affected Schumacher's car as we watch Mika Hakkinen, who is now in 7th place. Hill, Villeneuve, Alesi, Berger. Williams, Benetton. Martin Brundle is 1.4 seconds behind Gerhard Berger's Benetton. He's back where he was earlier in the race, behind the Austrian in the Benetton Renault, and catching it because, and by the same token, Berger is catching Alesi. Coulthard is down to 6th position, and Olivier Panis is out of the race. There are now 14 runners of the 22 who started.
So from that round of mid-race pit stops, Alesi did indeed maintain his 3rd place, and that's Alesi.
Gerhard Berger, he spun it, and what is more, he has stalled it. Gerhard Berger, who was in 4th place. Now, the problem here with the Benetton, and they had this problem yesterday when both Berger and Alesi went off in quite a big way, is that, like the McLaren, they're very light at the back. And when you put the power down, especially on this bumpy track, because Montreal has the most bitter winters, and the road surface gets broken up, and although a lot of the track has been resurfaced, that part has not. And it's my guess that, and is Schumacher seemed to be going very slowly indeed. I do believe that Schumacher is, yes, look at his left front wheel. I saw something bounce off the track. Has the same thing happened to, now here's the replay. Let's look at the suspension. Let's see what happens. Yeah, there's something bouncing out. And I think that Ferrari have had a suspension breakage on Schumacher's car, just as they did on Irvine's, and that is bad.
Well, it looked a bit like a drive shaft, but clearly we saw something come off that car, and so it's Schumacher into retirement. There's no way that's going to be fixed, but what a blow for Gerhard Berger there. This was his best race. There is his car being hoiked out of the way, his best Grand Prix of the year so far. That leaves clear ground now from Alesi. He's 20 seconds behind Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve is 22 seconds behind Damon Hill. But Villeneuve has not got to stop again in this race, whereas Damon Hill has. And this extra pit stop, by the time he comes in, I think will take something like 25 seconds. Damon Hill will need to have a 25-second margin over his teammate Jacques Villeneuve to come out of the pits after this second stop ahead of him, and that's going to be crucial for his victory chances. And there's on lap 45 now. I would expect to see Hill pitching for that second stop round about lap 50. So they are really having to go for it now. Hill might not look as if he's racing anybody on that track, but he really is, as is Villeneuve. They are both racing against the clock.
We have not had a duff Grand Prix this year. Australia, fantastic between Hill and Villeneuve. Hill won. Brazil, Villeneuve went off, Hill won. Argentina, Damon won again. Then Villeneuve took over for his first Grand Prix victory in Germany at the fabled Nürburgring. Hill won again in the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, lost the race in Monaco, which Olivier Panis won, And then we had that incredible race 2 weeks ago in Spain in the dreadful weather, which Schumacher dominated to win his first race for Ferrari. Now this is building up into something absolutely terrific. You've just heard from Jonathan that Hill is looking for a lead of some 25 seconds. At the present moment, he's 23 seconds ahead of Villeneuve on his 46th lap.
And just look how hard he's trying. One needs to use the curb on the inside of that turn 2 to help reduce the understeer. What happens is that by pulling the wheel up on the inside, it helps the front end grip. But the next bit of action pit-wise is going to come from the Jordan team, because we know that they were on a 2-stop routine. They stopped before Hill did, and we're going to see Martin Brundle, I think, coming in for his second and final stop very soon. Now, let's look at it. Brundle is 12 seconds ahead of Coulthard. He's going to lose 22-odd seconds having that stop, so that's going to put Coulthard up ahead of him into 4th. At the moment, Hakkinen is 17 seconds behind Coulthard, so the likelihood is that Brundle will come out in 5th place, and Brundle's coming into the pits now. We're going to find out the answer very soon. We are looking for a 9-second stop here.
Well, in comes Martin Brundle. Let's see if we get that 9 seconds. Meantime, Damon Hill is now a whisker over 24 seconds ahead of Jacques Villeneuve, trying for his target. Coulthard has gone through, up ahead of Martin Brundle, who rejoins the race. Coulthard is now in 4th position, and Brundle rejoins in 5th place ahead of Mika Hakkinen as you watch 2nd placed Jacques Villeneuve exiting the casino hairpin. And Damon Hill has just gone through. Now, let's see whether Damon Hill has increased his lead on the way to that. And that is Pedro Lamy in the Minardi out of the race, the Portuguese driver. That is the 9th retirement. And it looks to me as though he's right in the middle of the track. He's on turns. He's on the hairpin, actually, the casino hairpin. And one can only hope that he's left it in neutral. It's a requirement that it doesn't matter too much. They're going to forklift the car off the track. Here's a replay of what happened.
That's Lamy on the left-hand side there, and coming up the inside there, he gets clobbered from the behind by the Jordan, and that's Brundle. So Brundle does to Lamy what Berger did to Brundle. Look, he's lost the right front wing. What a mistake there. That is a big mistake, I'm afraid, from Martin Brundle. Oh, what a dreadful, dreadful blow to him. He, of course, has just come out of the pits after that second stop. Lamy had the door open, but he may have expected Brundle to go through, but circumspection should have been the word there. That, as I said, was what happened last year after Berger had followed Brundle for so long. Berger then came up the inside in a kamikaze move that didn't work for either of them. And this time it looks like both of those two are going to be out. Brundle may well come back, and he is coming back in for a new front wing. This is about a 15-second stop. It's going to put him behind, but of course it's the length of the time in the pits that's going to be the real casualty. He's going to lose about 25 seconds probably in total for this. And that's the Luca Badoa in the 40 car. Well, it's definitely not Eddie Irvine, that's for sure.
And it's at exactly the same place that Martin Brundle collided with Pedro Lamy. So Luca Badoa. So there's now about 10 cars out of the race. Out goes Brundle with his new wing, and he is down to 7th place behind Johnny Herbert, who is in the pits for Sauber. There is Johnny Herbert, and he's about to be lapped by Jacques Villeneuve. And Damon Hill is now a whisker over 25 seconds ahead of Jacques Villeneuve, who will be held up by Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert may move over and let him through, but their comparative times, lap times, are 1 minute 23.5 for Villeneuve and 1 minute 25.5 for Herbert. So Herbert is lapping much slower.
This is knife-edge stuff here. We're looking at absolutely critical stuff, not because Villeneuve's racing Herbert, but because Villeneuve needs every 10th of a second he can get, because the Williams team are out. They are waiting for this second stop from Hill. That should take 9 seconds. That one of Brundle's at Jordan took too long, quite frankly. And if Hill gets out ahead of Villeneuve, that's going to look as if it's very much Hill's race, because Hill will have the benefit of new tyres. However, if Villeneuve stays out ahead, if Hill comes out after Villeneuve goes by, Hill's going to have a huge job trying to get by Jacques Villeneuve. By the Jordan, by the Sauber goes Villeneuve, and of course Villeneuve has not got to stop again. He's just staying out. absolutely pumped up, fully motivated. It's all going to happen in the next 3 laps when this pit stop happens for Damon Hill. Nothing can afford to go wrong. It is that tight. Hill's now 28 seconds ahead after, and that's the difference between being held up by Johnny Herbert, no fault of Herbert's, but this is what tactics are all about. You have to take into account the chance of being held up by slower traffic.
Johnny Herbert may have won the race for Damon Hill. We don't know yet, but Villeneuve lost 3 seconds on that lap. I think this Luca Badar, this is the Italian driver in the 40, just pulling off. But now there are 10 drivers and cars left out of the 22 who started, and they are on lap 49 out of 69 as you watch Villeneuve trying to make up some of that time which he's lost to Damon Hill. Hill leading now by 28 seconds. And Villeneuve is 21 seconds ahead of Alesi, third, who is 18 seconds ahead of Coulthard, fourth, who is 21 seconds ahead of his teammate Hakkinen, fifth. Up into the points in the Sauber, thanks to reliability and consistency rather than speed, comes the lapped Johnny Herbert. Seventh is Martin Brundle in the Jordan, having come in to replace that broken wing after his collision with Pedro Lamy. In 8th position is Giancarlo Fisichella, and that is it, because now there are just 8 left with 20 laps to go. I said when this race began that it would be a race of attrition. I remember that at Monaco we just had those 3 finishers. In Spain we had 6 finishers, and that was very, very unusual, to put it mildly, to have 2 successive races have so few drivers finish. But it looks as though we may only have half a dozen or so finishing in Canada, because 20 laps is a long way to go with nobody retiring here. The longer the cars go, the more the stresses and the strains, particularly on the brakes and transmissions, will tend to take their toll. Damon Hill, now is he going in? Yes! Now, Damon Hill comes in 29 seconds ahead of Jacques Villeneuve for the pit stop that could win him or lose him the Canadian Grand Prix. Williams have made an excellent stop so far for Hill's first one and for Villeneuve's second one. And that is a ding-dong! Fabulous pit stop for Damon Hill, who now, has he got out in front of one? Will he get out in front? Yes, yes, yes! Damon Hill exits the pit lane before Jacques Villeneuve turns out of turn 12. So now Hill on new rubber and with a light fuel load and with 19 laps to go, leads the Canadian Grand Prix from the man you're looking at, Jacques Villeneuve. And as I said, it's a combination of all sorts of things: the strategy, the unwitting help of Johnny Herbert, and a superb pit stop for Damon Hill, which has enabled him to rejoin in the lead, looking now at a potential 5th win from 8 races. Villeneuve throws off one of the tear-offs. When you were looking back at the car, at his head, you probably noticed a lot of imperfections seemingly on the visor. That was simply where the tear-off, which they used to remove dead flies and oil and stuff, was adhering to the plastic.
Well, Villeneuve certainly won't stop trying, but he will know the fact that Hill's got out. A, he's ahead of him, and B, he's ahead on a new set of tyres. They've both got, in fact, every car here has now got or should have the same fuel load to get the end of this race, so no difference in performance from that. What we do have as a factor influencing the performance of them is the state of the tyres. Now, in fact, the tyres don't really deteriorate a great deal, but they are a little bit softer than they were last year. Last year, the tyres were the C compound tyre. This year, they're D compound. And looking across there, look at the angle of the flap on that front wing, how it bends back as the speed builds up on that camera angle, as the aerodynamic force pushes it back. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just a natural consequence of the force building up. But anyway, back to the front there, we've got Martin Brundle, who's now just 0.8 of a second behind Johnny Herbert, and it really would be great if Brundle can manage to get by Herbert. I suspect he probably will, because he really needs the encouragement. Is that the battle? No, that's Damon Hill, followed by the Minardi, because this has been Brundle's best race of the year. How unfortunate that it was Fisichella's teammate Pedro Lamy that Brundle had a collision with. No doubt Brundle thought that Lamy was letting him come through, giving him the room. Lamy was, I'm sure, equally amazed that Brundle tried to go for the gap. Whatever, it ended up in the removal of Martin Brundle's right front wing, a third pit stop to replace it, and he's certainly going to lose what could have been perhaps fourth place there, with Coulthard fourth, Hakkinen fifth, Herbert sixth, and I say Martin Brundle just 0.8 of a second behind. But Villeneuve is 11.7 seconds behind Damon Hill. Villeneuve is not giving up by any stretch of the imagination.
And the people who have retired while you watch race leader Damon Hill are, and I'm giving you the most recent retirement first, Pedro Lamy, as a result of being nerfed, took by Martin Brundle at turn 1. Luca Badar out in the 40. Gerhard Berger spun off, stalled his car. Michael Schumacher had some sort of a suspension or transmission collapsing problem, and he's out. Olivier Panis out in the Ligier, as is Mika Salo with a broken engine. Pedro Diniz out in the Ligier. Rubens Barrichello out in the Jordan. Montermini out in the other 40, Princeton out in the Sauber, Verstappen in the Arrows, Rosset his teammate, no cars finishing for the TW Arrows team, no cars finishing for Tyrrell because Katayama is out as well, and no cars finishing for Ferrari. 2 Williams in the lead, Alesi in the Benetton third.
And in fact, we have heard that, and there is Martin Brundle now, new front wing, charging hard, and he's ahead of Herbert. He's got by. He's been closing all the way. So now Brundle will have Coulthard not in his sights, I'm afraid. Now let's have another look. That's the manoeuvre. Brundle uses that Peugeot horsepower on the main straight section there into the right-hander before the pits. That's the overtaking spot. But we've also heard from Tony Giardina, our man in the pits, to say that it was indeed a drive shaft that came off that Ferrari. Now, I've never seen that happen before, and that really is a remarkable sort of event. So going to be a pretty hefty debrief, I think, for Ferrari here tonight.
I had the drive shaft come out of my model Ferrari, which I'd broken, but you certainly don't expect that to happen with a real one. Certainly not Michael Schumacher's either. Lap 54, Damon Hill, 11 seconds, looking good for another win. I'm being very careful about what I say about Damon Hill after the problems I've had in the past when I've prophesied things too early. I'm not going to do it today, but 11 seconds with a 69 lap. He's just got 69 lap race. He's got 12 laps to go now, and 11 seconds is a comfortable margin because their lap times are identical to the nearest 1/10 of a second now. Villeneuve is making a slight impression on Damon Hill, but nothing that could affect the Englishman's potential win if he just keeps going at the speed he is going. And John Alesi there in the sole Benetton is now 23 seconds behind Villeneuve. Things are looking fairly set because Coulthard in the lead McLaren is 20 seconds behind Alesi and 25 seconds ahead of his teammate. And Martin Brundle is 24 seconds behind Mika Hakkinen, and Brundle has been lapped in 6th position, and Damon Hill is now on his 55th lap in the 69-lap Canadian Grand Prix, and Villeneuve is closing the gap. It's down to 10.5 seconds now. Villeneuve out of turn 2, up towards the 70-mile-an-hour turn 3, left at 4, underneath the bridge, builds up to 145 miles an hour here, down up to 155, into the left-hander now, that's third gear, 55 miles an hour, swing right. This is where the speed builds up very rapidly indeed, unbelievably rapidly, to 170 miles an hour as he goes underneath the Concorde Bridge, backs off a bit for the right-hander at turn 8, stays at about the same speed for turn 9, now accelerates up to 170 miles an hour to the hairpin.
Villeneuve clearly not giving up at all, but he's going to have to go incredibly hard. I really cannot see that he's going to do it, but his pride will not let him do anything other than keep charging to the very end of this race. He's 10 seconds behind. There are roughly 15 laps to go, so he'd need to be 0.7 of a lap every lap consistently faster than Damon Hill to be right with him at the very end, and that always presumes that he can find a way by. So it's a tall order, but at least we can enjoy watching Villeneuve drive his heart out. And interesting here that with Hill and Villeneuve, we've got the two drivers in Formula One who are racing who've had famous motor racing fathers. Jacques Villeneuve's father, of course, Gilles Villeneuve, got killed in qualifying for the 1982 Belgian Grand Prix at Zolder, whilst Damon Hill's father, double world champion, 62, 68. Interesting too, their psychologist. Villeneuve is an incredibly cool individual. He's amazingly confident. He's nearly 10 years younger than Damon Hill. He's just 25 years old, IndyCar champion last year, and very much a maverick, does things his way, doesn't talk about his father much, doesn't really particularly enjoy questions about his father very much, whilst Damon, on the other hand, never had his father far from his mind, intensely proud of what he achieved, would love to emulate those achievements, and may well do too. Hill, very much the tenacious, careful, slugger away, just not making mistakes. Certainly we have seen none of that here. We've seen very little this year. And the speed that Damon Hill has shown this year, I think, has surprised many. I have to say it surprised me. He's gone faster this year than I expected. And many people, including Bernie Ecclestone, have been surprised that Jacques Villeneuve hasn't actually been a bit closer than he has been to Damon Hill. And this clearly has done Hill's stock value a great deal of good. He really is becoming one of motor racing's absolute greats.
Patrick Head, who is the technical chief of Williams, is not here, but I should think he could almost start thinking about polishing the Constructors' Trophy for 1996, because if Hill and Villeneuve stay where they are to score a maximum 16 points for the team, with Ferrari out of it altogether, Schumacher out and Irvine out, and the Ferrari team is second in the Constructors' Championship at the moment, that's going to increase the Williams lead by 16 points, and it will be a massive margin. My mental arithmetic isn't good enough for me to try to work out what it is while I'm talking to you, but it's going to be something like 50 points. A tremendous margin. That is Mika Hakkinen, 5th place, and as you can see, up behind him comes Damon Hill on his way to lap Mika Hakkinen, who is 5th, having already lapped Martin Brundle, who is 6th, and Mika Hakkinen recognising the Williams and Damon's helmets in his rear mirrors, should be the professional driver that he is and move over and just let Damon through. There's no point in fighting him. Damon is all but a car's length or so a lap ahead.
Now, Damon Hill's last lap time was a 1 minute 22.6. That was a 1 minute 22.4 on that lap, and that was the time that Jacques Villeneuve did on his last lap too. So these Williams drivers really right on the limit still. Hill knows that it won't take much of a hold-up for Villeneuve to be breathing down his neck, and he can't afford to be held up very much by Mika Hakkinen. But one of the problems that happens in this situation is that Mika will clearly he won't moving over, but he will let Hill through as and when he feels he really needs to. But he's still racing for his race, and so often in this situation it doesn't look to us as if Hill is being held up by Mika Hakkinen. But I can bet you that at the end of this lap, Hill will not have done another 22.4. And indeed, I can tell you that Villeneuve's just done a 22.3. So even though it doesn't look as if Hakkinen's holding him up, he will be. Now, is this Hakkinen? Yes, he's Hakkinen leaving the inside line, open for Hill. Excellent driving from Mika Hakkinen, and he did what he should, but I suspect Hill will probably still lose 3 or 4 tenths of a second. Villeneuve not giving up. He's still trying really, really hard. Good to see, actually, that Hakkinen seems to have shrugged off here, certainly, any doubts that some may have had that maybe he's not fully fit still from that dreadful accident from Adelaide last year. His performances have been a bit more erratic this year than they have before. Now let's have a look as Hill crosses that line. Remember, a 22.4, I don't have to eat my words at this point, and 22.7. Well, that is the proof, but no great surprise, that's what we expect. Now, Villeneuve was 9.1 seconds behind. Let's see what Villeneuve's done, 22.4, so Villeneuve's now 8.8 seconds behind. Evidence on the screen. Any little mistake from Damon Hill at this point, and that could be like braking a little bit too late. We saw Mika Hakkinen have a half spin going into the hairpin. Any of these things can use up 10 seconds just like that without putting you into retirement. Delicate situation.
But, of course, Villeneuve is going to come upon Hakkinen, as did Damon Hill. And although I'm quite sure that Mika Hakkinen will move over as he did by giving the faster line to Damon Hill when he sees Villeneuve right up behind him, I think Damon could well regain that second or so that he lost. We're on lap 59 now. 69 lap race. The gap between Villeneuve that you're looking at and Hill ahead of him as the McLaren and now the Williams round the hairpin to complete the lap very shortly is 8.8 seconds between Hill and Villeneuve. That's him. Looking back at him, Lacey is going to be settling for third position, hoping maybe that one of the Williams will have some kind of mechanical problem. Indeed, both of the Williams having a mechanical problem would be very nice from a Lacey's point of view. It would enable him to win this race, and that's about the only way he will, because he's now 37 seconds behind Hill, and a long way, 20 seconds ahead of Coulthard.
And he's still going. He set his fastest personal lap. By him, I mean Jacques Villeneuve. 1 minute 22.1 on that one. But whilst the focus is understandably on Williams, let's not forget McLaren, because McLaren are having their best race yet, with David Coulthard in 4th place, Mika Hakkinen in 5th. This is a great effort from both of the McLaren drivers. The McLaren running in long wheelbase form here. That's as it raced at Imola. It's certainly a problematic car. Its deficiency is not one of horsepower. The Mercedes engine is good. Not one of preparation. Their reliability is generally good. It's actually that the car is not particularly aerodynamically efficient. It doesn't produce enough downforce for the amount of wind resistance or drag. Now, on a circuit like this, which consists really of 2nd or 3rd gear chicanes linked up by long straights, that doesn't matter so much. So that's why McLaren's performance has been relatively better. But I suspect that in 2 weeks' time, when we go to Manicourt, with its fast flowing corners taking part in the format, we'll see McLaren slump back a bit when you need to get cornering grip when it has high-speed corners.
Yeah, I was talking to David Coulthard literally almost just a few minutes before he got in the cockpit, and he said exactly the same thing, that he expected the gap between themselves and the leaders to increase at Manicourt. He said we'll be in better shape at Silverstone, we'll be in good shape at Monza, but I don't think we're going to be in winning shape before the end of this year, if then. They are waiting for the 1997 car at McLaren. And out of the last turn to complete the lap comes Martin Brundle in the points for Jordan. He's had 1 points finish this year, and that was at the Nürburgring for the European Grand Prix, and the result of that is that he is well down in the championship. He's an equal 14th with just that single point, as Gerhard Berger thoughtfully looks at the monitors, and particularly the progress of his teammate. There he is, Jean Alesi in 3rd position, like Damon Hill and like Villeneuve, on lap 61 now. We can start counting down the laps as David Coulthard goes through. He is the last driver to be on the same lap as Hill and Villeneuve, and Alesi for that matter, because Hakkinen has been lapped 5th, Brundle has been lapped 6th, Herbert has been lapped 7th, Fisichella, who is 8th, has been lapped twice, and he is the last driver running in the race as Damon Hill goes into his 62nd lap. Just 7 laps to go, including the one he's on, with it was 8.1 seconds lead over Villeneuve.
You can see that that lead that Damon Hill has over Villeneuve is gradually being eroded by Damon Hill has over Jacques Villeneuve is gradually being eroded, but it's not being eroded fast enough to be a threat to Hill. Hill will know that. What Damon needs to do now is just to keep running consistently. He can afford to relax a few tenths of a second, maybe even 3 or 4 tenths of a second, without coming under serious race-winning threat from Jacques Villeneuve. But what's interesting here is that last night, the engineers from all the teams will have been sitting down, scratching their heads, punching their computers, working out what the right strategy was. Should they stop once or should they stop twice? There would have been hours of work, loads of figures going into it. How much the tyres degrade, how much faster the cars go when the fuel load lightens. And in the end, we heard, and of course we do our research, that theoretically 2 stops was going to be about 5 or 6 seconds, maybe 7 seconds faster in race distance than making 1 stop. But of course, what happens out there in reality when you've got cars to overtake, potential finger trouble in the pits to take account of, can influence that, and many teams would think that the chances of losing out by making 2 stops could be more than that 5 seconds. The Williams team, though, didn't take that view, certainly not with Damon Hill. Their pit work has been perfect. They've lost no time on that. Hill has been carving by the traffic that he has had to overtake. without any problem too. And perhaps what we're looking at here is bearing in mind that Villeneuve and Hill have been so evenly matched all weekend. The fact that Villeneuve only lost pole by 0.02 of a second to Hill is the fact that we are seeing, perhaps uniquely, the difference between a one-stop strategy and a two-stop strategy. And the fact that Hill may well end up winning this race by 6-7 seconds will be testimony to that.
It's very easy to criticise, and there goes Villeneuve past the McLaren of Mika Hakkinen. So Villeneuve, who is second, has now lapped Hakkinen, who's fifth. I was about to say it's very easy to criticise from the outside, or comment even from the outside, when you don't know all the circumstances. But having made that caveat, I am quietly appalled with what's happened to Ferrari. They were expected, after all their work, to come good here in Canada. Schumacher had been confidently predicting it all through the season, and what a dreadful race it's been for them. Eddie Irvine out almost immediately after the race had started with broken suspension. Schumacher out, never having been higher than 9th position, having clawed his way up from 22nd, where he had to start instead of 3rd on the grid after he had had some sort of electrical problem as everybody got away for the parade lap. So it's been a truly abysmal race for Ferrari, and Jean Todt, who is their very pragmatic and realistic team manager, and who always says, even when they've won a race, as they did in Spain, this is not the new dawn, we've still got a lot of work to do. We'll be saying that even more forcefully after this race. Lap 64, Damon Hill has stabilised his lead over Villeneuve. In fact, he is pulling away at the present moment. His last lap was half a second quicker than the Canadian, and he now leads by coming up to 9 seconds as he comes through to complete his 64th lap. Alesi is now well out of the running, but on a podium position again, and he's already been there 3 times this year on the podium, yet to win, of course. David Coulthard is the sole driver other than Alesi and Villeneuve not to have been lapped by Damon Hill. Hakkinen is still 5th, Brundle is still 6th, Herbert is still 7th, Fisichella is still in 8th and last position.
So with 5 laps remaining, it's quite a lonely time for the drivers out there now. Few of them are battling with anybody. They're just trying to maintain that all-important rhythm, trying to put the prospect, a little bit wide there for Villeneuve around turn 2, trying to put the prospect of anything going wrong with their machines out of their mind. You don't sit there listening for any tiny noise, looking, feeling for a vibration on the brakes. You get on, you concentrate with keeping up that fast flowing rhythm to make sure that you don't make mistakes. You look for little telltales of debris on the circuit by this stage too, because we can see the little marbles around, that's the bits of rubber, the tyre debris around, but there can be other bits too, just to keep it flowing. And it's important too to understand that these cars are not necessarily going to finish this race able to do another race, and the ones that break down just have some silly problems. These cars are all designed effectively to just do 200 miles. If the Grand Prix distances were increased to 250 miles as opposed to 200 miles, they'd be designed and built quite differently in various areas. And at the end of this race, after those 200 miles, the engines will all need to be totally rebuilt, the gearboxes will be clapped out, the brakes will be virtually finished, the dampers will need to be replaced, the radiators will be need to be replaced too, the exhaust might be a little bit cracked. These cars will be completely worn out in just another 4 laps time. That's generally the way that goes, but they've got to feel good, they've got to keep being fast until that flag falls.
Only 4 laps now for Damon Hill, that man, and Jacques Villeneuve, his teammate. Between himself and another victory, his 5th of the year if he sees the checkered flag first, and it's going to have been another crushing Williams-Renault demonstration of superiority. Renault had been taking some stick after they had had problems with Damon Hill's engine braking at Monaco, with Villeneuve having one brake at a testing session and then a 3rd engine problem elsewhere. But Bernard Dudot, who is their race chief, rightly pointed out that 2 of the engines were development engines, and you have development engines in order to break them to find out what you have to do to overcome weaknesses. So Renault are really crushingly beating everybody, because Jean Alesi there, who is in third place, is also Renault powered. So it's Hill, Villeneuve, Alesi, Coulthard with the Mercedes engine in his McLaren, Hakkinen with the Mercedes engine in his McLaren, Brundle with the Peugeot engine in his Jordan, who are the top 6. Now the Canadian flags are waving vigorously, and I have to say optimistically all round the track now, because the big crowd, and it's a really big crowd to celebrate the return of the name Villeneuve to Canada in Formula 1, is trying to will their man home first. But on lap 67, with only 2 to go after this, Damon Hill is over 8.5 seconds ahead of Villeneuve.
And I think what we're seeing here at the Canadian Grand Prix is a better representation of the pecking order of the cars than we did do in Spain. The fact that Schumacher and Ferrari won had more to do with Schumacher's brilliance in the rain than it did with the increasing performance of the Ferrari. And when we've come to a more conventional circuit, or perhaps we should say more conventional weather, then the real performance of the cars comes through, and there is no one to touch Williams. Williams still make the best chassis, they have the best reliability, but also, despite what Damon said in Spain, and I think even he would admit he was a little bit too harsh on Renault, they have the best engine as well. It may not be the most powerful engine at the top end now, I think perhaps the Peugeot could even claim that, but in terms of drivability, and that's the fact that the engine picks up progressively out of the corners, that it doesn't hesitate at all, and reliability and power overall, the Williams-Renault package is the best out there. And having said that, though, that Damon Hill is making the very best use of it.
5.4 miles between him and the checkered flag. He has rounded turn 2. There is his teammate, Jacques Villeneuve. He's made the fastest lap of the race, as you see on the caption there. 1 minute 21.916. That's a speed of 194.3 kilometres an hour. I can't do the conversion in my head, but it's jolly quick. And the pole position time and speed here for Damon Hill represented a speed of 122 miles an hour. 122 miles an hour average around this track, where some of the corners are of the order of 30. One of the corners is 35 mile an hour. That one that Damon Hill is going round now. Turn 6 is a 55 mile an hour corner. Turn 2 is a 40 mile an hour corner, and still Damon averaged 122 miles an hour around the whole lap. So that is Villeneuve, and he has just gone fastest. He is not giving up. He's fighting with every breath in his body and every nerve and sinew that he's got. 1 minute 21.916, the fastest lap of the race. But now Damon Hill is on his last lap of the Canadian Grand Prix.
And has driven absolutely superbly, a thoroughly deserved win that Hill is surely going to take, his 5th of the season, an immaculate performance. But I don't think his performance is in fact any better than that of Jacques Villeneuve. I think Villeneuve has been fantastic here today, and I think the reason that Hill's won has probably got as much to do with the fact that he ran the 2-stop strategy, whereas Villeneuve ran the 1-stop. But behind them, Jean Alesi, picking up his reputation, picking up the result for Benetton. Benetton again not having the car that Williams have. They have the same engine, more work to do there. But a really good result for McLaren. 4th and 5th, Coulthard and Hakkinen. A result that might have been split by the Jordan and Martin Brundle, celebrating his 150th Grand Prix, but not for that incident when he tangled there with the Minardi of Lamy. But a fantastic Grand Prix that's held the imagination all the way to the end.
The flags are waving for Villeneuve, but there are a few Union Jacks here too, and they are waving for Damon Hill as Villeneuve pursues him down the 180 mile an hour straight for the last time, and Damon Hill wins in Canada. And look at Villeneuve and how close he is behind his teammate. The gap on the previous lap was 6.8 seconds, and Villeneuve halved it to 4.1 seconds. Probably, to be fair to Damon, as a result of Damon backing off. And Alesi is coming home in 3rd position in the Benetton. But Canada has been another victory for Williams, another victory for Renault, another victory for Damon Hill. And with the 2nd position for Jacques Villeneuve. That is 16 points as Jean Alesi there in the Benetton comes down the straight for the last time, up behind Johnny Herbert, who is going to finish 7th, nearly a lap behind the Benetton. There is Herbert coming across the line, taking the checkered flag to finish out of the points for Sauber. Alesi finishes very much in the points on the podium for Benetton in 3rd position, and there's about 11 seconds now before David Coulthard comes home for the first of the 2 McLarens, 4th, Hakkinen 5th, and Martin Brundle has already gone his race distance to finish in 6th position, 1 lap down, as was Mika Hakkinen. And there is Jacques Villeneuve and Damon Hill, justifiably absolutely delighted, because he knew, as everybody else knew, that he had to do well here in Canada. Yes, he had 17 points advantage in the World Championship over a tie between Jacques Villeneuve and Michael Schumacher, but the Ferrari was seen to be getting better and better. It has seen to be getting worse and worse here in Canada, with neither of their drivers finishing, with no points for the Maranello team. So it will be back to the factory, not back to the drawing board, but back to the factory to have a long think about what they have to do to make their cars reliable. With Michael Schumacher's brilliance at the wheel, they're quick enough on occasions, but they're not quick enough and reliable enough to think of the World Championship. Damon and Williams most certainly are, and he has now got 53 World Championship points, which means he is 21 ahead of Jacques Villeneuve, who is 6 ahead of Michael Schumacher, who is 5 ahead of 4th place Jean Alesi, and David Coulthard and Parnis are 5th and 6th. So Villeneuve's got nothing to be ashamed about. That was his first Formula One race in Canada. Damon had not only driven here before, but finished 2nd here before. He'd never won in Canada. Now he's put that right. There's not many Grand Prix that Damon hasn't won. Monaco was one of them that he so badly wanted to win, but like Nigel Mansell, who also drove for Williams, of course, for a lot of his career, has been destined so far not to do so. But Villeneuve finishes 2nd. You can hear the applause of the crowd. And he goes over Charlie Whiting's Juggernaut, the machine that will test and measure everything to make sure that there are no dimensional or other problems with the cars. The drivers are actually weighed now. Martin Brundle in the yellow overalls, Mika Hakkinen in the red ones, Jacques Villeneuve. There is Johnny Herbert, who's just failed to score a World Championship point for his Sauber team. And the drivers are weighed because there is a maximum weight limit for the car and driver. And what they now do is measure weigh the driver, subtract his weight from the total, and then they know whether the car is legal or not. And I have no doubt whatsoever that they are. But I think, Jonathan, that whilst Damon has every right to be very, very proud of himself, so has Jacques Villeneuve.
Yes, absolutely. It's not easy racing in your home ground. In some ways, people think you have an advantage because you're more pumped up. But frankly, every race a driver does, he should be working to his absolute optimism. What definitely does change is that the amount of media attention, the adoration, you can see it all there, really makes life almost impossibly claustrophobic. And Jacques Villeneuve, the last few days, has been declining to even go out to restaurants, just staying at home, staying out of the limelight, just so that he can have some mental time to himself and think about it and just be quiet and peaceful and get on with the job of doing what he has to in the car. That's upon which he is judged, and we have to judge him extremely well here today. He may have been on pole, in fact, had it not been for mismanagement of his tyres a little bit perhaps, and the way that the race ran today, as I said, I think probably strategy had as much as anything else to do with it. The way that he tigered, he set the race's fastest lap in the closing stages, and that again was pretty remarkable on the basis that he was running tyres that had done half a race distance too. He was not one of the 2-stop strategy boys. He stopped just once, and normally one would have expected one of the people that stopped twice to have made the fastest lap.
Great scenes of enthusiasm here from a country, Canada, which is not traditionally a Formula One country. Union Jack there, trying to get a sight of Damon Hill as the stricken. I can't see whether it's Katayama's or Salo's Yamaha being Tyrrell being brought in there. But there's great scenes of enthusiasm from Canada, which is not a traditional Formula One country. The Canada and America tend to take more interest in Indy racing and NASCAR, but there is a strong and passionately enthusiastic bunch of people here in Canada who love their Formula One. They've been coming to the hotel and talking to us and staking the drivers, getting autographs, getting photographs, and I think they've had a jolly good day here at Montreal. Excellent weather. As I say, another dramatic and overwhelming win for Williams and for their two drivers, first and second places. But if we look down the list of cars and drivers, there are quite a lot who did not do well.
A lot of work to do yet, though, Ferrari. That's going to be the message that's going to go back to Maranello. The reliability and race pace certainly was not anything like their expectations here.
Well, Damon Hill's going to get his trophy from the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Jean Chrétien. But first of all, the anthem. So a superb win for Damon Hill, but Martin Brundle was one of the three British drivers to finish in the top six. Finished sixth. Would he have finished higher if he hadn't hit Pedro Lamy? Well, perhaps Tony Jardine can find out for us.
Martin, a tremendously gritty drive from yourself. You got into the championship points, but it could have been more than just the one.
Yeah, it could have been fifth or fourth. I had a misunderstanding with Lamy. I thought he'd given me the corner as I exited the pits, being that I was sort of a lap or so ahead of him, but suddenly just turned across and that was it. I'd lost my nose. But so I think it perhaps should have been a fifth place. We went for the two-stop strategy. I thought it was the right way to go. On the day, probably not.
You must be pleased with your own personal performance and the performance of the car.
The car was faultless. It didn't miss a beat all day. I've driven very well all weekend. I'm really happy, really looking forward to Manicourt and especially seeing everybody at Silverstone, of course.
What were the conditions like out there today?
It was hard. The track was picking up grip. We're about to get run over here, Tony. And
nothing new.
Exactly. But it was hard on the brakes and just it's hard on your feet, actually. There's so much energy into the brake pedal. But I don't know, it seemed a bit tedious from where I was sitting. I got close to the two Benettons for a while and we were having a good scrap, but I just couldn't make an impression on them.
Well, you say it's hard for braking. It is harder for you. People forget that one of your ankles is still pinned and plated, and you actually had some massage on that before the race, didn't you? Yeah, but that's normal, dear. You know, no excuses. Don't offer any excuses at all. We did a reasonable job this weekend. It is hard. You're putting 700 psi or something into the brake pedal, and it pedals feels like it's coming through your foot after a while. And I'm sure all the drivers will feel the same way. May I say how fresh you're looking? That's very sweet of you, Teach. Thank you.
Martin Brundle, as ever, giving a very realistic assessment of what he's done. And that was Madame Nicole Pajot-Goyette, who is the president of the Society of the Parc des Îles here. We're on the island here in the middle of the St. Lawrence, who was presenting the trophy, the champagne, to Damon Hill, and she was obviously saying, I know you sprayed all over people, and I hope you're not going to spray it all over me. No, madame, I am not, he said, and he didn't. But for the fifth time this year, Damon Hill has been up there with that magical symbol of Grand Prix success, the champagne. It's a dreadful waste of a wonderful drink, but it's become a Formula One tradition, and it's a nice spectacle, and long may it stay so. So now the drivers into the interview room. We'll hear from Damon, we'll hear from Jacques. I have absolutely no doubt that they will confirm what Jonathan has said, that there was nothing between them as drivers. It was the strategy that won the race. And I think it's Adrian Newey that probably evolved that strategy. He produced a very daring one for Damon Hill to win the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. Well, it was a perfectly straightforward one this time. 2 stops for Damon as opposed to 1 stop for Villeneuve. And there was just 4 seconds between the 2 of them at the end of the race. But I believe also that that 4-second gap, which had been reduced dramatically on the last lap, was as a result of Damon backing off. Either way, a very, very close thing and a great win for Williams, for Hill, and the 2nd place for Villeneuve.
Yes, whilst Adrian Newey certainly would have been involved, I think also would have been involved James Robinson, who was an engineer with Williams originally. He went across to McLaren, who's now back with Williams and injecting some more contribution to the complicated business and strategy there, as with, of course, the engineers from Damon and from Jacques themselves. The drivers have a role to play in working it out. Everybody gets it all together, and I'm sure that both were happy with the way they did things. I wouldn't think there'll be any regret from either of them anyway. But also for Alesi there, Alesi, this is now his 3rd top 3, 4th top 3 finish of the year.
Win in Canada, and after the last 2 races, you must be absolutely delighted to have won here today.
I'm completely delighted. I mean, it was a great race, and it was very important for me to do well here, because I've had 2 non-finishes, and Jacques is right behind me in the championship, and he was motivated this weekend. He put pressure on me the whole way, and of course we have Michael, but he dropped out early. But it was a tough race right from the word go. You had to go flat every lap, and but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm really, really pleased to have won.
You stopped twice, well, Jacques only stopped once. What was the sort of strategy behind that?
Well, we looked at it, and it looked quicker, but I mean, it was always going to be very close, because there's never been more than a sort of cigarette paper's width between us all weekend.
Right. Jacques, you were pushing very hard there at the end, and with your home crowd behind you, did you think that you could have caught Damon at all?
Well, I knew he was very far ahead, but I kept on pushing just in case he hit some back markers or made a mistake and I could get very close to him, but because he wasn't far enough in the front for me to just lift, so I kept pushing, and the track was better at the end anyway, and the car was handling really well.
At one point, I think we saw you lap Johnny Herbert and then he retake his position. Did you have any sort of problem?
Yeah, I saw the yellow flags, so I wasn't sure, so I just let him take the position back. It was better to do that than to get a stop and go after.
On reflection, would you have preferred maybe to have gone for the 2-stop strategy?
No, I think the 1 stop was pretty good. It was very close at the end. I wasn't quick enough on the opening laps. I was saving the brakes because I thought they were going to go away, but actually I could have pushed and they wouldn't have gone away.
Jean, you were a winner here last year, and after a good fight with Gerhard Berger, you must be very happy to be on the podium today.
Yes, of course. You know, our team is make a good effort to give us a better car. On Saturday, I had a huge crash because the brake failure, but I was a bit worried this morning because I was full of pain. But actually, the 3rd place is perfect for me for the moment.
You've been 2nd twice this season and 3rd position twice this season. Can we expect a victory in the near future?
Of course. You know what I'm looking for. Win quite quickly, but I have great friends. I have to fight a lot, and it's like that for the moment. But I have a very good team working hard, and I believe it can happen.
Well, Damon, we're halfway through the season. You're 21 points ahead, and you've got 5 victories out of 8 races. What can we expect at Manicourt and beyond?
I'm looking forward to the last part of the championship, or the next half. It's going to be very, very tight, and I expect a lot of challenges between now and the end of the season, but I'm really, really pleased for the moment to have won in Canada and put myself back on target and back on track.
Another superb win, his 5th from 8 races for Damon Hill. Just 4 seconds ahead of his Canadian teammate Jacques Villeneuve, and a massive 54 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi's Benetton. followed by the two McLarens of David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen, with Martin Brundle a very well-deserved 6th for Jordan, his second point of the season. Hill is 21 points ahead of Villeneuve in the championship now, and he's got over double the points of Schumacher after Michael's failure to score in Canada. Alesi is still 4th, but Coulthard moves ahead of Olivier Panis to 5th. Williams' lead in the Constructors' Championship is almost embarrassing, except for them. 50 points clear of Ferrari, who now have Benetton only 7 points behind them, thanks to Jean Alesi. Back to Europe now, to Magny-Cours for the French Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. Schumacher won there last year. Can he do the trick for Ferrari, or will Hill extend his lead yet more? We'll be there, of course. Live coverage of the qualifying in Wimbledon Grandstand on Saturday, and live coverage of the race, as usual, in Sunday Grandstand on BBC Two. Hope you can join us.